are to separate, distinguish, we say, between what is sacred, what is holy, and what is profane, between what is impure and what is pure. It seems pretty simple for the type A personalities out there. This is like a great passage. Put things where they go. But actually, in the Torah, the line that comes before it, that Ken or Kathy will be reading as well, it says, drink no wine or other intoxicant, that you may die should you do so. There was a law that was created to distinguish between what was sacred and what was not sacred. It was a law concerned with whether we're able to make decisions or not, and whether we have a clear mind to make those decisions or not, and it believed in the Torah, not just the rabbis who were later, but in the actual Torah, that if you were intoxicated, that you weren't able to make that decision whether you were a prophet or whether you were the peasant of the people. It mattered whether your mind was clear. We're here in Akron. I imagine most of us are aware of the Jalen Walker grand jury that's happening now, and it's the same question. Are we able to be clear-minded about a decision and decide whether it is pure or impure, whether what happened was right or whether what happened was wrong? And the Torah, and I think for us, we have to ask ourselves, are we clear-minded? Or maybe are we in some way intoxicated? I'll be honest, when I first read the first reports of Jalen Walker's death, I was one-sided. What do you expect to happen when you run away from the police in the middle of the night in an urban setting in downtown, you fire a gun? What do you think the result of that is going to be? But I've also had the privilege of being invited to some conversations with fellow clergy in Akron, people who've been following the case a lot more closely than I have, people who have very different feelings about it than I do, people who understand it from different perspectives. And it's not so clear anymore. What we know is Jalen Walker was 25 years old. He ran from the police. He's accused of violating a traffic offense. He potentially shot at the police while driving, and it resulted in 8 officers shooting him more than 45 times, and the grand jury is meeting this week and will likely have a decision next week. And here's what else we know. Whether the grand jury recommends indicting any of the officers or not, this is far from over. If they are indicted, there will be a trial. If not, then we're told that we could expect possibly a federal case to be filed and most likely civil cases to be filed by the Walker family. And so whatever direction this goes, next week is not the end. And what I've learned from the discussions I've been a part of is it's hard to see this clearly, even if it's first thing in the morning and you haven't had anything to drink. We are so blurred by the context that we're living in America today of, it's hard to hear it. This is the easy one. Turn it up. But if there's, is that any better? No?
Use this.
Yeah, I'll use this. So is that better? Oh, look at that. We'll start the service over now, if you'll turn back to page 3. So, really doesn't like me. So we're blurred by the context, because today we realize that there's a lot of stories, a lot of pain, a lot of fear between the black community and the police. When I talk with black leaders, oh, look at you, you're so smart. Now it's not going to do it. Okay. Good job. So we're blurred by the context. But it was news to me to also learn that the people chosen for the grand jury are not chosen from the city of Akron, which is 33% African American. They're chosen from Summit County, which is 13% African American, and they're chosen only from registered voters, which would make them even less likely to be African American. And so I can understand how a black man living in Akron would say, this doesn't seem like a grand jury that is going to look like me or understand what I feel like as a 25-year-old black man living in Akron, Ohio, when I get pulled over by the police. There was an article in last month's Atlantic magazine. The subtitle was better than the title, in my opinion. The subtitle was, "Reality is blurred, boredom is intolerable, and everything is entertainment." The author was Megan Garber. Her hypothesis is that we will become so distracted and dazed by the fictions that we seem to know and that we believe that we'll lose our sense of what is actually real. I'll say that again. We become so distracted and dazed that we'll lose our sense of what is real. Now, let me ask you, what's your definition of being intoxicated? To be so distracted and dazed that you'll lose a sense of what is real. Her example is somewhat mundane. It's a story of Amazon drivers who are delivering boxes to people's homes, and now many homes, like many of yours and mine, have a Ring doorbell, a little video camera, and people set up their Ring doorbell so that when the Amazon driver showed up, it would play music, and it would ask the Amazon driver to dance. And they would record the dance. And then they would play the dance on TikTok, and people would watch it, and it became a whole viral series of videos. Now, the challenge is the Amazon drivers get judged by how their deliveries go. So the Amazon drivers felt pressure to dance when they were asked to dance because that's how they do well at their job. If you're a fan of Ted Lasso, there's no spoilers here, I don't think. But I know. But there was a similar commentary in a recent episode, I believe, if I'm remembering it correctly, where somebody said to Ted, "I bet you have the highest Uber rating." And he said, "I do, because if those of you used Uber, you get rated as a customer." He said, "Sometimes I get in the Uber and I volunteer to drive just so that he'll give me a higher rating." In other words, we've created a culture in which reality is detached from what reality is. The job of the Amazon driver is not to dance in front of your doorbell, and the job of the rider in the Uber is not to drive the car. But the incentives are set up so that people feel they must do those things. Now, those are mundane. But I think they're examples, and she writes in her article, that this is how our society has become a society that lives in our own illusion of what we think reality is. She quotes Hannah Arendt, who studied this from a previous context, and asked, have we become a people for whom the distinction between fact and fiction do not exist? Sounds like something that was written today. Are we able to distinguish between fact and fiction? Or are we intoxicated? Are we living in what the author writes is a dystopia? The result that will be a population that forgets how to think, how to empathize with one another, or even how to govern. And here, my favorite line in her article is as follows. She writes, "A republic requires citizens. Entertainment requires only an audience."
And so, as our city struggles with the case of Jalen Walker and what happened, as we do so hopefully with sober minds, we'll know that whatever the grand jury decides, it's not over. And I think we should say it shouldn't be. We have to see past the headlines and not just be an audience and see this as entertainment. If it doesn't feel real to you, if it doesn't feel close to you, I can promise you there are people who live probably in your neighborhood, and if not, just a few miles away, for whom this is very real and very close, as real as Pittsburgh was for us. And so we can look at this and decide what, in our most sober minds, is right and what is wrong. Should a 25-year-old man be shot 46 times for violating a traffic stop? Should police officers go to work with the assumption that there are so many guns out there that any fast movement might be someone grabbing for a gun? We have police officers in my family. We have police officers, some of whom are here, who we love dearly. We know that they go to work every day not knowing what they're facing, and that fear is real. It's also been suggested that Walker was suffering from a recent breakup, from a long-term relationship. We have to have better support in our community for people who are suffering and hopeless, who are suffering from mental illness. And God knows we've seen in recent days shootings happening from people who have been in need of that help and not had access to it. But most importantly, the piece that I think the Torah says and that the article promotes is we're not to just be an audience to this. That it's our job to distinguish between what's sacred and what's profane, between what's pure and impure. It's our job to do our best to see through all the blurry vision and all of the entertaining elements that are put before us, and to figure out what's right and what's wrong. I pray that our city will be safe, that everybody in it will be safe, that the Walker family will feel that there's some sense of justice, that the police officers and those who protect us, that they also find that they are supported and that they are given the training that they need to make these hard, difficult decisions, often in the middle of the night. And that we can get through this inebriated state that we're in of not knowing what's good and what's not, who's right and who's wrong, and know that we can make these decisions with confidence. Shabbat Shalom. We'll turn now to read those very words written thousands of years ago. As we'll take our Torah out, we'll walk down the center aisle here and invite anybody who would like to reach out and touch these words symbolically, and then Kenner Kathy will chant the words for us.